Thank you for joining us today. It's very exciting. My name is Johnny Buck and I'm your moderator. Today for this session titled Create a Personal Culture of Fierce Radical Self-Care and Self-Love. To open our session up today, I'll begin with an invocation. Nami Piap, bless us with safety and comfort, love and care. We are on a healing, justice, and liberation journey. Bless us with wisdom, bravery, and kindness as we come together in art and activism. Today, we are supported by each other and we are supported by our ancestors. Thank you. The session was inspired by the idea and advocacy of Juliet Lee. We thank you for being you. At this time, we're fortunate and blessed to have Amadeo and Angel join us and support and lead us in celebrating the power of living with fierce radical self-care and love. It will take us on a journey to explore the importance of practicing individual and collective healing while addressing inequalities and inequities. And before our speakers introduce themselves, Amadeo will lead and support us with a somatic practice.
Maraming salamat, Johnny. Maraming salamat sa iyong lahat. Good. Thank you to all of you for being here in this sacred space. And it's a great honor to be here with Angel and Johnny. And before Angel and Johnny and I introduce ourselves a little bit more, I want to take a moment for us to fully arrive and ground together in this space. So with that, I'm going to invite you, if it feels okay for you, to close your eyes. And if not, you're welcome to let your gaze be soft and fall to the floor. So we'll start to bring our attention inwards, calling all of our energy back from the day and all of the places and situations that we have traveled already in our thoughts and in our hearts. And we're going to practice a great gift of pranayama, the gift of breath work as taught by our South Asian family. And what we're going to do is I'll lead us through what is known as, here anyway, as the triangle breath, where we're going to inhale evenly for a count of 4, and then hold the breath without strain for a count of 4, and then exhale evenly for a count of 4. So inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4. And one more time. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 2, 3, and 4. And letting your breath become deep and full. I invite you now to slightly to slowly open your eyes. We're going to do a somatic practice that's going to help us to, again, become more grounded into this space and into this present moment. I'm going to invite you to let your gaze be gentle and soft and in front of you. And imagine that there is a cord that's gently pulling the top of your head gently up. It's elongating your spine. And from just like breath work and other practices of relaxation, this is going to really work on what is known as the vagus nerve. It's one of the most important nerves, one of the longest nerves in the body. It extends from the top of your spine and into your organs. And it's the reason why we have a mind and body connection. Because when we trigger it through breath work, through prayer, through meditation, through singing, etc., and this practice that we're going to do, it actually helps us to relax. It activates the rest and digest system of our nervous system. So we're going to trigger that by gently and slowly turning our heads without strain to one side and breathing deeply in and out and letting your head gently rest here at a comfortable place. You're not ever trying to hurt yourself. Be very gentle, letting it rest at a comfortable place. And keep breathing deeply in and out. And find also a slight twist in your hips. That's activating that nerve. And inhaling and exhaling. And I'm going to invite you to let your gaze fall upon an object anywhere in the room. And just notice and observe that object. Notice its color and its texture, shape. And this can be your anchor during this session and throughout the day if you'd like. Anytime things start to get a little wobbly for you, you can always look at this object and it'll help you to ground. And keep breathing deeply in and out, and then gently and slowly turn your head back to center. Take a deep breath here, and then we're going to turn and do the same thing to the other side. Gentle and slow and breathing in and out. And again, finding that slight twist in the hips. And then as your head is resting at a comfortable place here, I'm going to invite you to let your eyes find the windows and the doors in the space. Your nervous system, which is geared to protect you and to keep you alive, is actually always looking for the escape routes. And so when we can consciously do this, telling ourselves, okay, Amadeo, look, there's the door and there's the window, and we can escape and we are safe. It helps to tell our animal body that we are safe and we can relax and we can heal. Okay, and then slowly and gently turn our heads back to center. Then take another deep breath and feeling our feet on the ground and our breath in our belly. Want to just give thanks to all of the original peoples on whose lands and waters we're all on, for myself here in Seattle, for the Duwamish peoples. And if you're not in Seattle, I invite you in the space of your heart to say thank you to the original caretakers of your lands. Okay, thank you everyone. And I'll pass it back over to Johnny.
Thank you, Amadeo. I feel very grounded and calm with that practice. So thank you for offering that to us. Now we're going to have both, all of you, Amadeo and Angel, introduce yourselves, and also while you're doing that, you can describe how you came into this work.
Hey, mitak yapi uchakpi wea matyapi na wachichia trajeki Angel Mills oglala oyanke imataha owakpami el matumpi na pahisinte el imakake. Hi, relatives, everybody. My name is Angel Mills. My Lakota name is Star Woman, Star Being, as I go by she and they pronouns. And I am a citizen of the Oglala Lakota Nation, which is a part of the Oteri or the Seven Council Fires. I currently work as a full-time clinical mental health specialist and therapist, or therapist as you'd say. I work in a hospital setting as a clinician. I've worked on my reservation, and I currently also work on another reservation. And in working on a reservation, it is rural, so and serving Native American people, very specific population. And some of my background for coming into this work has been based in having been born and raised on a rural reservation, having a lot of deficits within the health system and within mental health, and not being able to access or have access to those resources as a teenager. So that kind of started my journey toward this work. I then did my undergrad in psychology at Portland State University, and always have been involved in community, whether it was for powwow planning, community service, things like that, and also working with youth. I've also co-founded a film festival from where I'm from. I'm also a cinematographer and have directed and shot several music videos for several Native artists and musicians, as well as doing short story films and nonfiction. So I'm very grateful for that, for being able to be a part of Native American and Indigenous people telling our own stories through our crafts. I also do glass blowing, and for me that's very calming, and it's a mindful practice. You have to be mindful when you're working with a really hot glass that's in liquid form. And so I got my master's in Albuquerque at the University of New Mexico in counseling, clinical counseling. And that's really where I began my journey as a helper in the helping field. So I've been working in the helping field for 7 years, and I've been focusing a lot on working with Native American people, but I mean, I've worked with people of all age groups and colors and ethnicities. And so that's a bit of my background, and a lot of my focus is on the underserved community. So those that don't get a lot of resources or have minimal resources. So that's a little bit about my background. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. So wonderful. To be here with Johnny and Angel. So I want to say magandang hapon sa iyong lahat. Good afternoon to all of you. Ako ay Amadeo Cruz Giao. My name is Amadeo, and I use all pronouns, not just because I'm non-binary, but also because in my native language of Tagalog, we don't have gendered pronouns. And first and foremost, I identify as a healer. This was a title and a responsibility and a gift that was really thrust upon me without actually me wanting it necessarily, by several of my spiritual teachers, all independently, around the time when I was between 16 and 18. And this is how I understand my work as an organizational consultant, a facilitator, and a teacher. And it's also a legacy that I carry from my family, who are healers and community builders. I am second generation Filipino American, and I came to this work of healing, justice, and self-care and community care out of necessity when I was caring for my mom, who was very sick with metastatic breast cancer. Became very sick about 18 years ago when I was in my mid-20s. And I was her primary caretaker for several years as she made her journey into spirit. And it was really during that time of caring for her that I had to learn how to care for myself and juggle all the commitments and responsibilities that I had, both at work with my family and also as a community organizer, I had a full-time job as a director of a regional environmental nonprofit, and a busy organizing life with decolonizing Filipinos here in Seattle. And it was then also that I looked deeply and saw this pattern of overcare in my mom and her family, and actually within my greater family as well. I realized that not just her, but also 3 of her siblings and my grandfather, my Lolo Amadeo, all incredible healers in their own right, who gave everything of themselves to their community, to their family, all became sick with chronic illnesses at a fairly young age and passed into spirit, into ancestorship at a fairly young age as well. And I began to see, very clearly this pattern as well in my communities of queer and trans folks, of Black and Indigenous people of color, organizers, so many who were burning out from social change work, and the unaddressed trauma of living in white supremacist, capitalist, cisgendered heteropatriarchy. So it was during that time, over 15 years ago, that I started to create spaces of healing for queer and trans Black and Indigenous people of color, which turned into the first healing justice organization in Seattle called Zenu Healing, that I ran for many years. And we centered the holistic well-being of our communities using regenerative practices, spaces of healing, and also equitable access to nature. And so over the years, I have been so blessed to have individually coached and guided countless leaders from communities on the margin on how to transform and heal themselves in order to heal and transform the world, and fundamentally change the ways in which we do social change. And I've also been blessed to have held healing space for thousands of people now in these past couple of decades. And most recently spent 2 years as at the Potlatch Fund as the capacity building director, and which is where I met the awesome Johnny Buck. For those who don't know, Potlatch is a Native-run community foundation doing grant making and leadership development in Northwest Indian country. So as a consultant, I continue to do the work of bringing healing justice framework into social change movements, organizationally and systemically, both here in Seattle and across the country. So thank you for that. And I'll pass it over to Johnny.
Thank you, Amadeo and Angel. And yeah, I could just feel the power, as I'm sure we all can feel the power of your presence, especially listening to the healing work you do in all of our communities. So just a quick overview of our time together here. Now it's a fairly short time. It's like less than an hour, but we have interactive sessions. We have a couple of activities. One activity Angel will lead, which is going to be a total of 11 to 12 minutes, includes breakout rooms, and then we'll quickly debrief. And then we'll go into another group activity led by Amadeo, and then we'll come back into the large group again, and we'll move towards a more traditional moderator speaker panel type of discussion, and then we can answer some questions that our audience has. So to begin, Angel, please take it away.
Yes, so I wanted to start with a story that is a part of my culture. So as a Oglala Lakota person, we grow up with a lot of different stories in our families, in our culture. And one that I always grew up with, my mother always sharing, is the story of the white buffalo calf woman. And the reason why it's so important is because of the values and the belief systems that she had given us. So how the story goes is that 2 hunters were sent out from their camp to go hunt to get food, and they came upon a hill, and there was a woman standing there, and she was in just this amazing, beautiful buckskin dress, and she was there holding something. So both of the two hunters went up to the woman to approach her. One of them immediately knew that this was an otherworldly being, somebody not from here, and knew already to give her respect. So what he did is he got down on his knees, he averted his gaze, he knew this was some sacred being. The other man stood, he looked at her, he was in awe of her beauty, and he began to think of, like some lust feelings of, I want this person or this woman to be my wife. And as he was having those thoughts, a thunder strike came down and struck him, killing him instantly. And so he disappeared into ash. So the remaining man that was standing or was kneeling there, she talked to him and said, I am the white buffalo calf woman, and I am bringing you these 7 virtues. And she had in her hands a pipe. So she said, with this pipe, I'm going to give you these 7 virtues to live by for your people, to guide you all. And part of that was the prayer, respect, compassion, honesty, generosity, humility, and wisdom. And so she gave him this pipe. She passed it to him 4 times, and 4 is a sacred number, and as well as 7. And as she did this, he received the pipe, and she walked away. And as she walked away, she started to run, and she started to tumble, and she turned into a white buffalo calf. And as this white buffalo calf was running, it tumbled and it turned into all 4 of the colors, with black, red, yellow, white, that represents the 4 directions. So the teachings of this story has a lot of implications, but for our purposes today, focusing on that value of respect. And when we think of respect, we think of giving respect to other people. But in our Lakota way, respect is also for yourself. So taking care of yourself, respecting yourself and your needs is part of what we are taught to do. In that, when you're whole or when you can take care of yourself, you can help those around you. So for the next part of this discussion, we want to have a conversation and everyone to engage in a conversation, and to think about, what are some of your own coping skills or your own coping mechanisms? Like, what do you do naturally? So for example, some people go for a walk, some people listen to music, something like that. But just to have time to really talk with each other and break into a group of what your own natural coping skills are. I think at this point we can get started. If we can break into groups of 3, and we'll give you all about, if each member could have 3 minutes each. So 3 minutes per member, and that'll be about 9 minutes, and then we'll come back together.
Thank you,
Okay.
Angel.
Great.
Dale.
Yep, great. Okay, so I made all the rooms. So take a moment just to, introduce yourselves and share, how do you naturally take care of yourself? How do you live this incredible story that Angel just shared with us? Hold on for 1 second. I just want to make sure it's in the chat. Okay. All right. We'll see you in about 7 minutes. Welcome forward, everyone. Just waiting.
Welcome back to the main room.
There we go. Okay, got everyone back.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've had some great discussions in your smaller pods. So the main reason for this activity is to really join together in community, and also, gaining agency over our narrative and how we do our healing in our within our communities, because a lot of us are part of organizations or work or practices or community work that have a lot of intergenerational traumas and other things that are to be considered, right? So through that, using your own natural ways of healing, and it could also include a ceremony, prayer, medicine gathering, foods, traditional foods, modeling, connecting, through prayer or spirit or however you identify or express yourself, but to have those outlets and that way to connect within yourself and those around you. And so as a big, as we come together, just having those suggestions and hearing from each other of what we can do. There might be something that somebody else said in your group that you might want to try. For example, in my group, there was a kettlebell, like working with a kettlebell. And so I thought about that, like for your spine. And for me, that sounds like something that I could probably benefit from. But the intention of this too is just to share that information and that knowledge. And I also want to share in the chat some resources around self-care. And so these, I usually, in working with people, give out, and one is a self-care assessment, just to see where you're at in your self-care, how you're doing. And two are some tips. And again, these are really general templates. They're not culturally specific, maybe not even culturally responsive. So just to keep that in mind, and that you can always add your own. So for me, I would maybe add some smudging on there, different ceremonials and things like that for my own self-care. So I'll have this the next back over to Amadeo.
Thanks so much, Angel. We hope that you got some good inspiration. So now we're going to talk about, well, we all know, okay, that we do not exist in individualistic vacuums as Western culture would like us to believe, but that we are in interconnected, profound networks of interrelationship. So it's excellent to think about self-care, but how do we care for ourselves and our communities in these oppressive systems and cultures that do not value caring for ourselves and being able to slow down and breathe and smudge and pray? How do we move from self-care to community care? So a helpful framework, and one that I've been coming from for over 15 years now, is called Healing Justice. And for those who aren't familiar with the movement and the term, Healing Justice is defined as resiliency and survival practices that center the collective safety and well-being of communities. It is a movement and a term that was created by queer and trans, Black and Indigenous people of color, in particular Black and brown femmes, and it centers working class, poor, disabled, and Southern and rural healers, recognizing the impacts of intergenerational trauma, of systemic violence, of oppression and war on the health of our communities, right? So recognizing that, if we're having a difficult time with our mental health, it's not just our problem, right? It is the impacts of intergenerational trauma, for example, in our family history, right? It's the ways that we have to interact in these really oppressive systems that are telling us that we are not worth anything all the time, right? So, and we have been doing this work in our movements forever, right? Since, for example, acupuncture clinics that were run by Black Panthers, to the role of prayer and ceremony at Standing Rock. It's not new, but the terms and the movement as itself has been organizing is fairly new in the past 20 years. And we really believe that caring for ourselves and taking time to rest, all of these things that we so desperately need for the longevity and the sustainability of our movements, is not separate from the struggle for social justice, but is rather integral to our fight for collective liberation. And so we understand that these tools and practices, these ceremonies, these policies of caring for ourselves and our organizations, these are all tools for building power. And therefore, they are an important political strategy that can keep us sustained for the long haul in movement building. So our question to you all that you'll be discussing coming back into small groups. We're going to have different small groups this time. We're going to introduce ourselves a little bit as well. And is, how do we care for our communities that exist and live with intergenerational trauma and war and oppression and histories of violence and genocide? What are some ways that we are already doing this, caring for ourselves in our organizations and each other in our organizations and in our movements and in our practices? So for example, Angel shared ceremony and smudging, and also what about grounding practices at our meetings? What about slowing down in our meetings and getting to know each other and ourselves in a more human way? What about a slower pace and more human-paced workloads, right? And other examples include policies that include flexible time off for mental and spiritual health, prayers, medicine gathering, etc. What already works in your community for creating these cultures of care? So I'm going to put that question into the chat. And first I want to, before we break out, does anybody have any questions before we move? Okay. All right, great. Okay, so we're breaking out into groups of 3 again. I'm gonna move. There we go. Okay, so it's all 3. Okay, so we'll have about another 7 minutes or so. Okay, and we'll just be discussing the question. All right, thank you everyone. See you soon. Looking forward, everyone. People had good conversations. Right. Welcome forward, everyone. So you had really good conversations. I'm going to pass it over to Johnny, who's going to start to wrap us up.
Yeah, we're winding down on time here, but I see the smiling faces after coming back to the big group. And if you have any questions, we're going to transition into the panelists answering questions. I could kick us off, but just drop your questions into the chat, and we hope to get to them too. just a question. I know we're talking about like self-care practices and collective care practices, and some of it's just just like daily practices, and could be uh, like addressing some of the immediate needs or what have you, during that time, for ourselves, whether it's like resting or just spending time with friends, or calling all the friends up and saying, hey, let's go swimming and spend time together, or in ceremony, and just like on a deeper level, for Amadeo and Angel, um, when we think about like a healing journey, uh, and like we we have to think about some of that deeper healing, right? And that's getting into addressing and healing some deeper wounds that we have. Um, uh, I guess for ones that are young here, for the youth, and maybe ones that are aspiring or are beginning their healing journey, you can just express, maybe what that means for you, or uh, how that felt for you, or maybe just how it feels to heal some of those deeper wounds. You know, just whatever, with what I said inspires you. I think that could be really helpful.
Thanks, Johnny. Angel, do you want to go first? Do you want me to?
Yeah. You can go.
Okay. Thanks, Angel. Yeah, I think, thinking about the healing journey, it's like a layer, it's like an onion, right? Like you get through one layer of like, oh, I realize, I'm too busy all the time. I need to start to, maybe not make my schedule super full, and then being in a state of reflection of like, well, wait a second, why do I do that, right? And then so it's taking off the other layer and being like, oh, because I've internalized that my self-worth comes from my productivity. And then it's like, oh, well, the next layer, and all of these layers are making you cry, right? That's what I think about healing. And then being like, oh, my family, it's because my family are immigrants, for example. And we've been taught that if we don't work hard, we're not going to have enough money to feed ourselves and our family in the Philippines, right? So it's like this layer after layer of even the simple thing of like, oh, I realize I'm really busy, right? And then it's just opening up all of these pathways and opportunities to continue to heal. And it can be so deeply painful and isolating. And I think that's where the community care, and having a community that you're healing with, and you get to talk through these very similar, but obviously unique and different experiences together, where we feel like we're not alone, because we get wounded in community, right? And we heal in community. And so I think, the way that self-care has been propagated in mainstream media is like, oh, we're going to go to this yoga retreat and everything's going to be fine. And that's not it. We have to actually be bringing our entire community with us through our work within ourselves, but literally together, as we're doing the work together and creating new cultures, creating new organizations in which these things are lifted up and held with honor, because the world that we're trying to create, we're not going to be creating it with the same tools and the same ways of thinking that created these problems in the first place. And all of that begins with a healing framework. So turn it over to Angel for your thoughts.
Thank you, Amadeo. I think that was so nicely put. Um, I also, want to stress, well, I also want to emphasize, we have enough stress, is that self-care, it ebbs and flows, and it's not always going to be perfect. And to not always hold it against yourself of like, I'm not doing it in this way, or I have to do it in this certain way. It really can transform and be something on a personal level of what you like. Even just taking a moment to be like, oh, I really like this lighting, or I really like the temperature in the room, just something that is just a very small practice. Because we're also, again, like the story I shared earlier with that respect to others, but you're respecting yourself of like my place in the world and what I'm also doing. And it's okay to be authentic. And sometimes maybe you don't feel like doing those things, and that's okay. But also noticing enough of, what is the threshold? Is this getting a little bit too much? Is it not serving me? And what can I do going forward? And so, is there a healthy distraction? Do I need to walk the dog? Do I need to call up a friend? Something like that. So really, one of our, I guess, our takeaways is that, there's no one way to do this work, and there's no one way to do self-care. And we can incorporate our culture and our background within what we do.
Yeah, thank you for that, Angel and Amadeo. Um, and we're starting to wrap up with our time here. Um, are there any, just share some closing remarks, words of wisdom for everybody, wherever they're at in their healing journey?
Um, Thank you, Johnny. I think one thing, and I want to, yeah, reiterate that Angel shared is step by step, right? We make change not by making these. So January 17th is the day that researchers have pinpointed is the day that every 90% of people who've made New Year's resolutions drop them, right? It's because we make our goals too big and too unsustainable. So the way that and there's incredible science around this, right? Of the way that we make sustainable change is that we make small steps, small goals. Always encourage, if you want to, for example, you want to start stretching, right? You don't say, oh, I'm gonna stretch, I'm gonna go to 3 different yoga classes a week. Guess what? That you're gonna be burned out on that next week, right? So one thing you can do, again, is keeping it under 10 minutes. Say, for example, I'm gonna stretch, this is one thing that I want to do. I'm gonna stretch for 5 minutes a day. You want to make it so easy that it would be really hard not to do it. So step by step, little by little, this is how we make change. And it's the same way in our culture, these small conversations that we have that are going to have ripple effects. And all of the healing that we do step by step, just little by little. And that's how we create those big changes. Thank you. I'll turn to Angel.
Yeah. Again, small steps. I know we've heard the buzzword of mindfulness several years ago, but really it is just that presence, being in the present, and focusing on the moment, how your body's doing, checking with your body, your spirit, all parts of you.
Okay, I don't, thank you for that. I don't see any questions in the chat, so we're gonna transition out and just somatic experience and practice. So if we just want to just shake out any energy, just shake out your head, your body, your hands, even in your heart, and your feet, your legs, any energy that doesn't serve you at this point, and get that blood flowing again. And we're going to transition out with 4 breaths, just some deep, slow breaths. And we'll inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. And if you want to do it in the 4 directions too, or just in place, that's fine. So we can begin now. Yeah, so that was some individual and collective healing practice for us to do together. We hope you enjoyed this session. And thank you for joining the Seattle Equity Summit 21. This was a beautiful session led by Amadeo and Angel. Thank you for just being here with us and just sharing your knowledge. We appreciate it. So everyone have an amazing day, and we look forward to seeing you in the other rooms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ina Palamia.